You guys, we have a loudness problem. You probably think I'm going to say drummers are playing too loud, without any dynamics or musical sensitivity. And while doubtless that's true in some circumstances, I'm actually talking about the opposite problem. In fact, we have an epidemic of drummers who play too quietly, in my humble opinion. You're probably going to ask for my admittedly anecdotal evidence. Exhibit the first. Here I am at El Patio Studio in Barcelona. It's just one of countless practice spaces I played in the years of living in New York and traveling all over the place. And in those many studios, there's always a particular group of drummers I notice playing too softly. More on that in a second. Anyway, exhibit the second. I've been coaching drum students live for going on 16 months now. And as part of that coaching, I'm watching the videos of a lot of excellent students, some of whom need encouragement to come out of their shells and bash. Unless you think I'm throwing my students under the bus, here's a video of yours truly playing too quietly. And here's another one. I'm playing Killing in the Name of, and look at my stick heights. I'm not even digging in on killing it, but what is loud enough? Am I saying every drummer needs to bash on every song? Isn't there a big range of dynamics? Sure, but my contention is that a lot of drummers don't realize how hard drummers on even their favorite recordings are hitting. Today on 80/20. How loud should you play? In what situations should you play louder or quieter? Stay tuned. Here I am hitting during a recent practice session here at El Patio. Now, here I am playing a little solo at the clinic I did this week in Barcelona. But how loud should I be hitting? That's something I explored 2 weeks ago when I was shooting my Could I Do the Gig with John Mayer video, which I'll link here. If you listen to the songs in your headphones, you think, moderate volume, right? Like, who did you think I was? You might think, yeah, this is kind of a moderate volume song. And it is compared to metal, but maybe not compared to how loud you think it should be. Like, look at Steve Jordan's stick height here. Or how about Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, a mellow little ditty that appears on the same live album. Listen to it on the stereo and you might think you could play it with stick heights of a couple inches. But let's watch J.J. Johnson actually play this live. To get away from John Mayer a bit, here's some audio from one of JJ's recent gigs, an appearance with Gary Clark Jr. Form a picture in your head of how loud you assume the drum part should be. Now let's look at JJ. A lot of layers here, a lot of caveats to explore as I put myself in the shoes of someone trying to pick apart my argument. We'll get to that. First though, why am I so hung up on stick height? Here I am in a recent video covering, yes, some John Mayer. On this video, I got comments like, you need to play with more energy. Here's an excerpt of a video I did with Meinl in late February. Zero comments about playing with more energy. What's my point? The mics and mix have a lot to do with how loud the drums sound on a recording. That's why I think stick height is a much better proxy than just trusting your ears. Somebody with a big stick height who sounds soft is maybe just mixed lower, whereas you can make somebody playing softly sound loud in the mix, but you can't really fix stick height. And sure, there are going to be variations by strength, leverage, and arm weight. Like this one I'll talk about later. But even if a skinny guy is swinging from over his head, that's a signal. I want to give a few more examples of drummers we might assume are playing softly, actually hitting hard, just for it to sink in. When I was growing up, I was obsessed with Vinny, like a lot of drummers. When I first heard If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, I assumed Vinny was hitting probably medium hard. When I saw this video, I was shocked by his real stick heights. Likewise, I'd assumed 7 Days was kind of low-key, pretty soft. But looking at the recording, Even here on the video, you can tell Vinny's digging in. What about Jeff Porcaro and Steve Gadd, the mild-mannered drummers of groups like Steely Dan, Paul Simon, and Toto? Well, here's some audio of Toto's song Africa. And here's some hard-won footage of Jeff actually playing it. No big deal, just stick heights up to his shoulders. Here's Steve playing maybe his most famous beat with Paul Simon on 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Audio only. Now here's the footage. That's a stick height over Steve's head. What about Ringo Starr? Stuart Copeland? Okay, I've made this point to death. And by the way, why am I not including in this anthology of videos people like Matt Cameron? Matt Halpern? Or to continue our theme of Matts, Matt Garska? Although I guess I did just kind of include them? Anyway, everybody already assumes they hit hard. The same is true of folks like Eric Moore and Aaron Spears. So what am I actually saying? That you should swing from the rafters every time you play? No. I'd summarize my point as this. Many drummers don't realize how hard some of the drummers they look up to are actually hitting. They have a limited conception of the top end of their dynamic range. But let's talk about some exceptions, some counters to my argument. Counter the first. What about drummers who don't actually hit hard? Those exist? Let's take a few of those. Here's Perrin Moss with Hiatus Coyote. However loud he sounds, he's not swinging from over his head. He's achieving that with efficiency and mix. Another great example is Death Cab's Jason mcgerr. Isn't he keeping his sticks pretty low? He doesn't need to try to play like Matt Halpern. He's letting the mix do the work, right? How about the inimitable Brian Blade in this live performance with Norah Jones? Or the drummers of Wolfpack, Jack Stratton and Theo Katzman. I mean, they're playing it at Madison Square Garden, and they're letting the mics do a lot of the work. You don't have to hit as hard as Nate to be heard. Before my editor yells at me for all these clips, I think I've made my point. If you think I'm saying all great drummers hit hard, that's not what I'm saying. But I think it's kind of the exception that proves the rule. What I really think we're getting at is that some music just requires volume. Full stop. You're not going to play softly with rage. Sorry. And why would you want to? But most music, regardless of volume, benefits from two things: dynamic contrast and intensity. To reuse some of the existing clips to make my editor happy, look at Blades playing with Norah here. Would anyone say he's lacking intensity? Let's check Theo and Jack once more. In this funk paradigm, it's about playing in the pocket. They're so in the pocket, the volume is kind of secondary. Also, they're playing MSG, not small 500-seat venues where you might need to project more due to imperfect sound. Alright, so where does this cash out? Well, in two ways. Let's start by assuming you don't care about playing loudly, you just want to have intensity behind your beats, like Blade. One of the most important ways to get that is a big contrast between your rim shots and unaccented strokes. Students in my coaching program will remember this. I'm always going on about that. Let's just pull a couple examples out though, of drummers not playing super loud but still bringing that intensity. Here's Blade again. Here's Perrin. And here's Nate in one of his softer moments. If there's one thing we notice they all have in common, it's a big differentiation between their accented and unaccented strokes. A good way to practice this is by playing the left side of a paradiddle with your snare hand and just adding quarters or eighths with the lead hand. As you can see, I don't have to play rim shots very loudly, but it's super important that I differentiate them from the unaccented strokes. Next, let's show a slice of a much more complex exercise you can get for free by clicking the link below the player. It's the third video in the free course I'll send you. Here I am just playing the first half of an inverted paradiddle with the kick drum on the last 16th. As you can see, this is a great opportunity to practice using your arm and wrist to increase your stick height. The slower the better. I'll show you one more that gets your other hand involved. Finally, I like to just practice big dynamic contrasts. Like, I'll play a beat softly on the snare and hats for a few bars, then transition to the ride or crash and practice hitting the snare with the full stroke. This will help emulate the intensity of players like Brian Blade and Nate Smith. Finally, let's revisit that Jason mcgerr thing because it's been bothering me. When we say he's not hitting super hard, that's not strictly true. I think what's more likely is that he's a pretty big guy and he's generating volume with arm weight without wasting energy. But it's still got the intensity behind it. I bet if you or I played this gig, the sound engineer would be asking us for more volume. Trust me, I've been there. Plus, check out Jason in the chorus. All of which begs a question. Am I willing to defend hitting hard for its own sake, even if you could produce exactly the same intensity by playing quietly? I am, and for two reasons. First, sound. The drums take on a different sound when you're really hitting them. Like a pop you're not going to get playing super delicately. Second, attitude. It feels different to play hard. It's a way of participating physically in the intensity of the music. And when everything is hitting and you're in control, it feels very good to let loose and swing a little. And if somebody thinks they don't want to play loud without experiencing that, I feel like they're not operating with a complete data set. Like deciding to swear off sex when you've never. Bad analogy. Moving on. If you guys have enjoyed this video and have a constructive comment, please leave a comment below. If you've been watching the channel for a hot minute and think maybe I've earned a subscribe, well then hit that subscribe button. Click the bell too. And if you'd like more info on the completely free mini course I was alluding to before, just click the link below the player and enter your email address in below the player. I'll send that to you completely free. Anyway guys, always enjoy these. See you again real soon for another lesson of the week.